So this is a review of the Convoy L21A. So Convoy have been selling this flashlight for quite a while now. It's fundamentally very similar to an L2 or an L6, and you can get it with several different emitters. This particular one is using the Osram white flat. So it's essentially what's known as a W2. I don't know if we can get the camera to focus it, but the HX version. So it uses a slightly bigger footprint, and it's got a slightly larger die on it compared to the W1. So you get slightly more lumens, but in theory slightly less throw. I think this is actually probably the better emitter of the two, because you get a much bigger beam, and you know, while lumens don't mean everything, the increased lumens you get versus the trade-off in throw, I think is quite worthwhile. So this particular flashlight, it's pretty chunky. It's running on a 21700. I've got a Samsung 40Q in there at the moment, and it's got an 8 amp driver which is programmable. A bit confusing in a way, the driver. This one sadly came I don't know, in some sort of weird unprogrammed mode that wasn't working properly, but I think most people, it's not a problem. You get the default mode when you unpack it, but you've got 12 different mode groups, which I know the driver's built to go into other lights as well, but I think that's probably sort of 10 groups too many really. But I've got this one set I think to mode group 6, so it's just high, medium, low. I don't really see the point in a moonlight on a dedicated thrower. I certainly don't want things like SOS or strobe, not when you've got to scroll through them to make the thing usable. You just keep it simple. It is a big light, just to sort of put it in comparison. Here's an S2 Plus from Convoy, so this is just a standard EDC tube light. So you can see the body's a little bit fatter and the whole light is really quite chunky. So this thing is definitely a coat pocket light. We've got a reverse tail clicky, which is nice, mechanical lockout. Personally, now the driver's set up on this, I actually quite like it. It just kind of works. I know Andoril and electronic switches are quite popular these days, but I think for this type of light, you don't need ramping, you don't need all those other things. We've just got a high mode, we've got a mid mode, and we've got a low mode. And if you want more modes, you can select one of the other mode groups, and I think you can get up to like 7 brightness settings or something. There's no turbo, it's just a high. Now this light is big and heavy, and it's chunky. It's really head heavy. In the hand, it's almost a little bit uncomfortable. You can, I don't know if you're able to see, but it's the balance point on it is very far back. Even trying to hold it, I don't know where the centre of gravity is. It's somewhere along the middle of the head, I should think. So it does feel like it wants to tip out your hand a bit. On the flip side, this thing is going to run and sustain its output very well. And there's some guys on the forums who have done some output tests on this, and it will run pretty decent, stable output on the high mode. Whereas a lot of other lights will sort of throttle down, so they're impressive for 30 seconds or so. This one will stay impressive for longer. I'm not exactly sure what the lumen output is supposed to be on it. I'm seeing just under 1,000 lumens out the front on my light box. To give that some context, I see about 1,200 lumens on my Nocticon KR1, which is running the W2 LED as well. It's not the HX version. So I'm definitely not seeing quite so many lumens. And I'm getting about 6.6, 6.7 amps at the tail cap. I know you really want to measure it at the LED, but that's just the way I was measuring it, just to sort of see what it was sucking out the battery. And I'm getting a little bit over 300,000 CD on it, so it's by far and away my most throwy reflector light that I own. But let's put that into context. We'll fire it up and you'll be able to see what it looks like. Right, so this is a high mode. Let's just go through some of these modes. So we've got, there's low. So if we come up close to the bow, so you can see we do get a little bit of spill beam. The tint is a little bit white, dare I say even a little bit greenish on the lowest mode, but as you sort of pump the current up, it does get better. But even on low, you can see we're projecting a a spot quite far down the field. This is definitely a thrower. It also means that it's going to be pretty useless doing anything but that. You know, you can see up close this on this low mode, even we get a really intense hot spot, there's no way you could map read, there's no way you could use it for sort of working on a car or doing anything other than long distance really. But there are times when you won't want it on its highest output, so it's worth having at least one lower mode, even if you don't go for this setup. It's medium, low. Right, so that's high. So you can see again, we've got this spill beam, and that's really the difference between the W1 and the W2 emitters. You do get a bit of a brighter spill. So if you are going to go out walking with it, it does light the ground up a bit better. But I do think it's just one of these lights that, you know, when you're walking along, unless you keep actively pointing it a long way away, it's going to jiggle about in front of you a bit, and it's not going to be a very nice sort of walking light. But that's not really what it's meant for. What this is meant for, and look at that beam, you can see how intense and laser like it is we can shine and light stuff up that's a long way away. So we've got a tree there, not really that far away, 100 yards perhaps at the moment, but that's the that's the field boundary. But I think of note is, even though this is the W2 emitter, the beam isn't massive. I mean, it's big enough that, you know, we're several people high, you'd certainly be able to light a car up. In fact, we've got a car to spare we can light up, but it is still quite a narrow field of view that you're lighting up at these sort of ranges. So there's no way we can light that whole tree up. And we can go across the field. You can see we're still lighting up the boundary. We've got an electric pylon in the field behind us. I should think that's getting on for about 200 yards from here, and it's just easily doing that. Got some closer trees, got another pylon there, and we're at the other boundary. And to be honest, I think this is where I think this light is great, but also suffers a bit, is you've got to be in a really, really big area to really make use of this beam. And I just don't have anything here that I can really shine it at that you're going to be able to see. So we've got a building over there, but again, that's only 150 yards away. Got another building a bit further away. Kind of want something that you can reflect off as a barn. See what we've got in the field. So we're right at the boundary of the field behind us now. I can see it with the naked eye quite well. You know, and it is good. It is. There's no denying this is a good thrower. I know there's flashlights out there that claim, you know, perhaps 600,000 CD from basically the same setup. I don't quite know how they get almost double the CD rating in something no bigger, running at the same sort of amps, but I don't own any of those. I don't know what they really compare like. What I can say is this does throw really, really well, but I don't think I'd want this light with the smaller W1 emitter. I think the beam would just be too pencil thin, that apart from going, oh wow, look, you can shine it in the sky, I don't think you're ever going to light up anything that's going to be useful with it. Whereas I think this is, it's just on the cusp of being useful, you know, very usable, but only in controlled conditions. I'm glad I bought this. I got it from Simon direct from his AliExpress store. Cost nearly £40 to get it back to the UK, which I think is quite good value for a thrower of this standard and build quality. It really is a nice light, but it really is a very much a one-use light. You know, coming out and scanning the fields is kind of fun, but I don't know what else I'm going to do with it. I'm not going to keep it in the car because it's just going to be absolutely useless for anything else. I mean, let's just come back around. If I shine it at these bales here or down in front of us, you can just see it's just far too intense a beam to be usable. You know, I know you could probably put a diffuser over it or something to try and make it a bit more of a user-friendly light for other things, but I think you're better off just bringing a different light. But yeah, if you want a thrower and you don't want to spend too much money, get one of these.